Welcome back to Fusty Stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and get ready for another story you won't forget. Let's dive back to the story. Caroline Reed grew up far away from London's glittering chaos. She had lived in Monaco under a different surname, far from the fame of her father, Sir Patrick Reed, one of Britain's most powerful billionaires. He owned Reed Enterprises, a tech real estate empire stretching from London to Dubai. Caroline was his only child, but he had hidden her identity for safety and simplicity. When she turned 27, she told her father she wanted to experience love that wasn't bought by money. Sir Patrick hesitated, but finally agreed on one condition. She would live under a different name, Caroline Eric, without any trace of wealth. With new papers, an ordinary flat, and a modest job as an interior design consultant, Caroline started her new life in Manchester. She wore simple clothes, took buses, and learned to budget her meals. For the first time, she tasted the raw rhythm of the ordinary world. She didn't realize that the decision to live as a nobody would lead her to both the deepest pain and the most poetic revenge fate had ever written. Ethan Cole had dreams larger than his bank account. A tall, charming, dark-skinned Nigerian-British man in his early 30s. He had once believed success was only a matter of effort. But London was ruthless. Bills, rejection letters, and the constant echo of, "We'll get back to you," had buried his ambition under frustration. When he met Caroline at a cafe, she was dressed plainly, sipping tea with quiet elegance. Her kindness disarmed him. Her soft laughter reminded him of what peace felt like. He saw her not as an opportunity, but as comfort. They started dating. Caroline loved his fire, his street smarts, and his fierce determination. Ethan, meanwhile, felt respected for the first time. To her, he was a man of purpose. To him, she was a mystery, calm, intelligent, too composed for a woman with nothing. When they married at the city registry, Caroline didn't ask for a ring, a gown, or a wedding car. She only wanted love. She thought she had found it. Marriage life was simple, but heavy. Caroline worked quietly and sent small allowances to support Ethan's projects. Unknown to him, she also called her father and begged him to help Ethan secure a job at Reed Enterprises. "But he must never know who I am," she pleaded. Sir Patrick, though reluctant, loved his daughter too much to refuse. A few weeks later, Ethan got an email. He had been hired as an assistant operations manager. He was overjoyed, thinking his resume had finally paid off. Caroline watched him celebrate with pride in her eyes. She had secretly moved his resume through her father's private line, ensuring he got a chance no one else could. Yet she stayed humble, still cooking, washing, and smiling while he planned his new life. Her love for him blinded her to the slow shift happening inside him. The pride, the power rush, the arrogance that comes when a man begins to mistake grace for luck. Weeks turned into months. Ethan's confidence grew. His humility faded. He started dressing differently, talking differently, spending money he hadn't earned. "I'm finally becoming the man I'm meant to be," he told Caroline, ignoring that she had been the ladder that got him there. He came home late, exhausted but boastful. He no longer asked her about her day. Her voice became background noise to his rising ego. Caroline noticed but said nothing. She believed marriage meant endurance. She prayed, hoping his sweetness would return. But power intoxicated Ethan. He started comparing her simplicity to the glamour of women at his workplace, women in heels, perfume, and wealth. He forgot the woman who had lifted him when he was at his lowest. And just like that, the first crack in their love appeared, invisible but fatal. At a corporate cocktail hosted by Reed Enterprises, Ethan met Sabrina Wells, a strikingly beautiful dark-skinned British woman with crimson lips and a dangerous smile. She had a reputation in social circles. The kind of woman who could sense a man's weakness faster than he could sense her lies. She flirted with Ethan, praised his ambition, and laughed at his jokes until his wedding ring felt like a burden. That night, he drove home in silence, replaying her voice in his head. Sabrina wasn't interested in love. She had seen Ethan's employee ID. Reed Enterprises was enough bait. She believed he had money. The next day, she texted him, inviting him to talk business. Ethan agreed, blind to the trap. Caroline cooked dinner that night, waiting, but Ethan didn't come home. He was drinking wine at Sabrina's apartment, being praised by a woman who saw him not as a husband, but as prey. It started small, missed calls, late nights, forgotten anniversaries. Then came the verbal jabs. Ethan began mocking Caroline's boring clothes, her cheap jewelry. "You need to look like a wife of a man who's going places," he'd say. But she smiled through the pain, unaware that her love was being replaced by contempt. When Sabrina entered the picture fully, Caroline's world tilted. Ethan started bringing her around, introducing her as a friend, even though everyone at his office could see the truth. One evening, Sabrina came to their flat, uninvited. She strutted in, demanding coffee, speaking like a queen addressing a maid. Ethan said nothing, even laughed. Caroline's heart cracked, but she endured. "I'll prove my love," she whispered to herself, as she knelt to pick up Sabrina's drop handbag. That was the night Ethan's humanity began to die. The morning that broke Caroline's soul came 2 weeks later. Sabrina had slept over. When she woke up, she pointed to her muddy designer heels and sneered, "They're dirty." Ethan, still drowsy, smirked. "Caroline cleaned them." The room froze. Caroline's breath caught in her throat. "Ethan, what did you say?" He repeated it coldly. "Clean her shoes, Caroline." Sabrina crossed her legs, smiling like a predator watching her victory. Tears filled Caroline's eyes as she picked up the heels. Her hands trembled, her heart shattered, but she obeyed because love had made her blind. The sound of Sabrina's laughter echoed through the apartment as Caroline scrubbed the mud from the shoes that symbolized her downfall. That day, she learned that silence is not peace, it's suffocation. But the universe sees everything. Unknown to Ethan, Reed Enterprises had surveillance protocols, and Sir Patrick Reed reviewed every managerial department file. When he came across Ethan's name, something stirred. This man's wife. Caroline Eric, he murmured. The name struck him as familiar. A discreet investigation revealed what he feared. His daughter was married to one of his own employees, and that same man was now living as if he owned her. Sir Patrick called his private assistant. "Keep watching him. Record everything," he ordered. Caroline had chosen love. Now, love was killing her. But Sir Patrick was not a man easily defeated. He was waiting for the perfect moment to let the truth explode. That weekend, Ethan took Sabrina to a luxury club in London, bragging about his upcoming promotion. Sabrina, meanwhile, was stealing from his wallet under the table. Caroline stayed home, alone, staring at her reflection. She looked older, smaller, invisible. That night, she called her father and confessed everything. "Dad, I can't hide anymore. He's not who I thought he was." Sir Patrick's silence was thunderous. "Come home," he said finally. "It's time the world remembers who you are." Caroline packed her things quietly, left her wedding band on the table, and walked out. She didn't leave a note. She didn't cry. The woman who left that house was not the same woman who entered it months ago. She was reborn, not as Caroline Eric, but as Caroline Reed, daughter of the Empire. Monday morning arrived with chaos. Ethan strutted into work, unaware that his life was about to collapse. At the staff meeting, Sir Patrick himself entered, something that rarely happened. Everyone stood. Behind him walked Caroline, radiant in a tailored white suit, her confidence like fire. Ethan froze. His mouth fell open. "See Caroline," he whispered. The whisper spread like wildfire. "She's Sir Patrick's daughter?" Sir Patrick turned to Ethan with cold eyes. "You made my daughter clean another woman's shoes," he said quietly. "You're fired, and you'll never work in this industry again." Cameras captured the moment. Sabrina, terrified, slipped away. Ethan tried to speak, but no sound came. For the first time, he saw Caroline not as a wife, but as a queen he had tried to turn into a servant. Ethan stood motionless as security escorted him out of Reed Enterprises. Colleagues whispered, cameras flashed, and the press feasted on the scandal. He tried to speak, but his throat was dry. Just 2 days earlier, he'd forced his wife to scrub another woman's shoes. Now, he was being thrown out of a billion-pound empire owned by her family. His mind spun in disbelief. The woman he'd insulted was not a pauper. She was the heir. His arrogance had cost him everything. As he staggered to the parking lot, the luxury cars around him blurred into ghosts of the life he could never touch again. Sabrina ignored his calls. When he reached her flat that evening, it was empty, stripped clean. She had taken his savings, his gold watch, even his clothes. A single note lay on the bed. "You were just another fool with a job. Goodbye." For the first time, Ethan realized the difference between love and lust. Love sacrifices. Lust devours. Caroline walked through her father's mansion for the first time in years. Marble floors gleamed beneath her heels, and portraits of her ancestors watched silently as she ascended the staircase. Sir Patrick waited in his study, proud yet saddened. "You gave your heart to a man who didn't deserve your kindness," he said softly. Caroline nodded, her eyes steady. "But he gave me something too, father, wisdom. I now understand what it means to love myself." That evening, the Reed family released a public statement. Sir Patrick Reed proudly presents his daughter, Caroline Reed, to the board of Reed Enterprises as co-owner and executive director. The news spread across London like wildfire. Social media flooded with headlines. People who had ignored her now called her ma'am. But Caroline stayed humble, elegant, graceful, and untouchable. She had survived humiliation. Now she was power personified. Meanwhile, Ethan's downfall was complete. His bank account was frozen, his company ID useless, and his name blacklisted. Former friends avoided him. Even his landlord demanded rent he couldn't pay. He wandered the cold streets of London, his once polished shoes now scuffed, his breath visible in the night air. Every billboard with Caroline's face, the new face of Reed Enterprises, was a dagger to his heart. He tried applying for new jobs, but his name had been circulated as untrustworthy. Sir Patrick's influence stretched too far. The man who once mocked his wife now begged for interviews that never came. For the first time, Ethan felt what true humiliation was, not the loss of wealth, but the loss of dignity. He realized the woman he betrayed had once been his only miracle. Sabrina Wells resurfaced in the headlines, not for glamour, but scandal. She had been arrested for defrauding multiple businessmen, and Ethan's name was among the victims. The police questioned him, and though he was cleared of major crimes, the humiliation deepened. He had been a pawn in a con artist game. The tabloids titled it "The Fool and the Heiress." His reputation was shredded beyond repair. Caroline watched the news silently from her penthouse suite. She felt no joy, only a heavy kind of peace. "Karma doesn't need an invitation," she whispered. Her father approached. "You're too merciful," he said. She smiled faintly. "Mercy is for me, not for him. I'm done hating." The world would think she'd won, but in truth, she'd simply chosen peace over revenge. Weeks later, Reed Enterprises hosted a charity gala at the Ritz London, a global event broadcast live. Caroline attended in a flowing white gown, elegance radiating from her presence. To everyone's surprise, Ethan appeared at the entrance in a wrinkled suit, trembling. The guards tried to remove him, but Caroline raised her hand. "Let him in," she said. Gasps rippled through the hall. He walked toward her slowly, head bowed, his pride long dead. "Caroline," he began, voice cracking, "I am sorry." She looked at him, not with hate, but with calm distance. "You made me clean another woman's shoes, Ethan," she said softly. "But you didn't dirty me, you revealed me." The crowd fell silent as she turned away, the orchestra resuming its song. For Ethan, that moment was worse than any punishment, being forgiven but forgotten. After the gala, Ethan vanished from the public eye. He moved into a small flat on the outskirts of London, living off small jobs. He tried writing apology letters to Caroline, but they always came back unopened. He heard rumors of her global success, how she expanded Reed Enterprises into Africa and Asia, how her leadership had double profits. Each headline reminded him that the woman he broke was now a legend he could never reach. Caroline, on the other hand, focused on rebuilding women's dignity. She created the Reed Foundation, an NGO supporting single mothers and survivors of emotional abuse. "No woman should bow to cruelty in the name of love," she said at every launch. Her pain became her ministry. The world that once pitted her now celebrated her strength. One rainy evening, Ethan saw Caroline again on a billboard near Piccadilly Circus, her face glowing against the storm. He stood there, drenched, staring at the woman who had once slept beside him in a tiny flat. Tears mixed with rain as memories flooded back, her laughter, her patience, her kindness. He dropped to his knees, whispering, "I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me." The city lights blurred as he broke down completely. That same night, Caroline sat in her office reviewing charity proposals. Her secretary entered quietly. "Madam, someone's waiting outside. He says he used to know you." Caroline hesitated, then nodded. "Send him in." When the door opened, she saw Ethan, pale, broken, a shadow of himself. For a moment, the world paused. Caroline, his voice was barely a whisper. I came to apologize, not for forgiveness. I don't deserve that. I just want you to know I finally see who you are. Caroline studied him. The arrogance, the pride, gone. All that remained was a man haunted by his own actions. Ethan, she said softly, I loved you when you had nothing. You broke me when I gave you everything. But you've already been punished by your own choices. He nodded, tears streaming down. You're right. I don't expect you to take me back. She stood, extending her hand. I wish you peace. He took it, trembling, before turning away forever. That was the last time they ever met, not as lovers, but as lessons to each other. Years passed. Reed Enterprises became a symbol of power, integrity, and compassion. Caroline was featured on Forbes as the billionaire who humbled arrogance. She expanded into tech, fashion, and philanthropy. Her father, now old and proud, watched her reign with admiration. You've built more than a company, he said one evening. You've built a legacy. She smiled, and it started with heartbreak. Meanwhile, Ethan moved to the countryside, living quietly as a mechanic. Sometimes customers recognized him, the man from the scandal. He no longer denied it. Yes, he'd say, I was a fool who made his wife clean another woman's shoes. But in that humility, he finally found something Caroline had once begged him to discover, contentment. On a bright summer morning, Caroline visited her father's grave. We did it, Daddy, she whispered, placing white lilies on the stone. She looked at the sky, her reflection now peaceful, fulfilled, and free. In the distance, a newspaper headline fluttered by the wind. Caroline Reed opens Global Women's Academy. She smiled, not out of pride, but gratitude. As she walked away, the camera of fate zoomed out, from the heiress once disguised as a nobody, to the queen who rose from humiliation. Her story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about revelation. The same woman who was once ordered to clean shoes now walked streets lined with her own billboards. And somewhere far away, Ethan knelt by a church door, whispering her name, not as regret, but as a prayer. That's all for today. Like, subscribe, and see you in the next episode. Stay tuned.